So what I'm trying to explain and what I will do into the code before, let's understand some scenario, then we'll discuss about the code. Till now, we have covered so many things, and we have in which we have seen that how to get the data from the user and how to perform the operations to connect the database, to perform the validation, to store the value, to fetch the value from the database by using the servlets or by using the JSP. JSP is more appropriate and more convenient to present the user UI, because you can write your HTML code very easily. And even we can write the code by using the JSTL in JSP, so it makes more convenient and more easy to write the code. But sometime what happen when you send any request and you get the value, and for example, if you want to use those values again somewhere in your application, so what you will do, you will again send the value through your request, isn't it? Suppose this is your client, and you have opened one application, and you fill up some form from here, and after performing after filling the form, you send the data to the server, and there some logic is performed, and you get the response. After some time, I need some data from the previous request. So what will I do if I uh, if I write the code? Then what will I write? I will set that value into request one more time. So again, when you send the request from the client, then the request plus your data will go into the request. Okay, so if we talk about in terms of the traffic and the load that comes into your application, we can say that again the data is coming from the request. Though we have already got the data in the previous request. So what we should do, we should save that data somewhere to use them. So one convenient way is to use bean classes. Bean class means this is called the reusable component of the Java. So have you heard the bean class? Do you know what is called bean class? Do you know the term Java bean classes? Good. So in bean class, as we know that class will be public members. Okay, okay. So I'm just explaining, just understand this. If you have any query after that, then you can ask me. So bean class is one of the example of proper encapsulation, we can say. Okay, proper encapsulation means the class that should not have any static member. First thing, every member that you declare into the Java class will be private, and every method that you declare into the class will be public. So when we declare any bean class to use into JSP, first thing we will not uh, let me show you something. Okay, I can write into it. So I'll use the same application, that is session div. This is your these are some classes. I'm going to create one class here with the name bean demo. I can write bean demo. So this is one class. If you declare any variable inside it, so make it private. This is the proper rule that I'm telling you. And sometimes it is referred as the Fojo classes also. So it is very useful if you go to learn any framework, then these kind of the class you will create every time, because internal implementation uh, is in the frameworks like struts and um, the Hibernate uses the Pojo classes, the internal implementation. So that's why I'm telling you what is the bean class. Just look at here. So private, if I want to create a string, string username, so I will write username over here. Then private, again I can create any other variable, suppose password. This is, and for every variable that you declare, instance variable, you will create two methods. One that will set the value into this, and one that will return the value that is available into this variable. So one method is called setter method, and second one method is called getter method. So for every member, for every instance variable, you will create two methods. One is setter and second one is getter. So the naming convention is method will be public. Okay. If you want to create the setter for the username, so what you will write, setter will return nothing, void. Then we write set first. The naming convention says that it should follow the set first and then the username, that your variable. And here you will write the same type of the variable, username, and then we write like this dot username is equal the value that is coming in the form of the username. So this is the setter method. And if you want to get the value of this variable, then you will create a method that is public. And since we'll get the value username from this method, so the return type must be the same as the variable. So return type will be a string because I want to get the name of the user that is hold into this variable. So a string and get username. This is the naming convention. And since we want to return, so it will not accept any value. Then we will write return and then this dot username. This is. So you can see that for one variable, we create two methods. So if you have more than one variable, so you will create two methods for each variable. And suppose you have 10 variables in your class, then what you will do, you will write 20 methods for those variables. So one convenient way to create the setter and getter is if you are using any IDE. This is provided by the IDE that you can create the setter and getter with the help of IDE wizard. Just look at here this step. Right click on your class, okay, since we are using the IDE, and choose insert code. Okay, insert code, you will find the same thing into your Eclipse. Okay, and generate code you will find there, that is insert code and then generate code. And what you want to generate, okay, so I want to generate the getter and setter both. So choose the option getter and setter, and the properties that is inside your class you will find here. So for which property you want to create the setter and getter method, just check those properties. So I want to create for both, so I will check and generate. So look at here, it will create getter username, return username, getter setter name, sorry, get password, return password, set username, a string, this dot username, set password, this password dot password. So if you have any number of properties in this class, then you can create by right click on it, go to insert code option, choose getter and setter, and then press OK. You will get these class. And in Bean class, we don't create any constructor. Okay. what is the purpose of the constructor? Let me remind one more time that we have already discussed in the previous session when I was discussing the constructor. The main purpose of the constructor is to initialize the data members of the class, isn't it? So for that purpose, for that work, we are defining the variables to initialize the value of any variable, that is set username and set password. So you will not create any constructor into the bean class. And not only this part, you can create any other methods also. For example, if I want to create, then I can create public. For example, integer is square one variable integer x, and it will return the square of any number. So return x into x. But actually, the purpose of the bean class is to this one. But we can declare it, no problem at all. Now tell me, got it, Meng? Any confusion? Is it clear now? So do you want to ask anything that you were confused about the bean class? Only a few things you have to remember. One, bean class will have means this is the rule to create it. All the member will be private, no constructor. All member will have two methods, that is setter and getter. No static declaration, no static. So and we can say that this is one example of the proper encapsulation also, because everything will be bind into the object. Encapsulation means wrapping the elements into the object. Is it clear? Concrete example. Okay, I'll show you with one example in which I'll use it. Okay, I'm not using it just till now. Okay, in what I will explain it definitely. Only I'm asking that the rules are clear, that how to define it. Okay, so let's use in the application. Okay, so just come to this part here. Come to the project. Okay, let's see. I will create one JSP page, and after that I will explain. Maybe that I will try to explain in the way that this confusion should be clear, that what situation will be there to use the bean classes in our application. So this is the index.jsp. I'm deleting all the things that we have already discussed. Don't use the cookies, username, that username. So I'll use the username from here to here, and the password. First, let me change it, then I'll explain what I'm trying to do. And remember me, just remove this. And it will go to the login validate servlets, but not login validate servlet. I will send this to one more JSP page, that is home. Okay. So here I will write home.jsp. I hope the action is clear. Okay. And here, what will I do? I will get all the value that is coming from the request. Got it? So for that, what will I do? What will I do? I will get these values that is coming from your request, the username and the user password. For example, username is ABC and password is 123. And if I send this request onto the home page, okay, so I will try to get the value. So what will I do? We have already learned too many things. One, by using request.get parameter by scriptlet tag. Second one is by using the JSTL, you can get these values. Fine. And again, what will I do here? I will use another tag, just look at here. That is called the JSP action tag. It is called the usebean class. Okay. There is action tag that calls usebean and which bean you want to use. So I want to use bean that is bean demo. This is the bean class I want to use here. So you have to write the fully qualified name. Fully qualified name means com.lari. The class name that is bean demo. Use this class into it, and since this is the class that you want to use, so by which you will identify the object, just look at here, ID. ID means the reference. And if you remember the very first session in which I was discussing about the object, so I have already discussed three things in the object. One is ID, second is the state, and third one is the behavior. So ID means the name, the reference variable. So I will get this class object by this ID. Now look at here. Okay. And another one more method, is action is called the set property. Okay. And I'm writing the property name as asterisk and the name which object's property you want to set. This method. Let's look at here. Which object's property you want to set. So I want to set the property of obj. So I will write the name of that object. Okay. So let me close it. So this will set the property of that object. And let's get the value JSP dot get property of object obj, and which property you want to get. I want to get the property of username. So I'll copy and paste. Copy and paste, and here I will write the password. Let's execute this code, then I will explain. Username I will write as Meng, and password I will write something here, and just log in. Then you will say that the value that you are passing through your request and the password you are passing through your request, you are getting into the JSP. So this JSP actually uses the bean class, okay, by the name obj, and it set all the properties. Asterisk means all the properties of obj that is coming from the request. So this will set all the value into your Java Bean class. So now one object has been created with the name of obj. It has the values of uh, it has the value that is coming from the request into these properties. If you want to use this object anywhere in your application, you can use this obj and you can get the username and password anywhere in your application. So you don't need to send or you don't need to pass the value every time from the request, since this component, the bean class, is called the reusable component. It is one of the component. So this is called the reusable component. How to reusable component? Why we say that it is reusable component? Let's create one more JSP. Even you can use anywhere in your application. So I'll create the JSP because we are this will be a new JSP. Okay, let's see the new JSP. And I want to use the value that is set into the bean onto the home page onto the new JSP. So I will not again send the request to the new JSP. I will try to access. So one more thing you can do is you can set the scope of this to the session. Now copy this code. I'll paste here and get the properties of this value. So let's just run and now run this file. Let's see that this file is getting the value or not. So you are getting the same value from the bean class. So this is actually reusable component. It will persist. The term that we use for the bean class is persistent. Okay, so it will persist your value, and whenever and wherever you want to use the values of the username and password into your application, you just need to call only this object. For example, every time you want to send a request to the page, but first of all you want to validate the user, that user is valid or not. So on every page you can perform the validation, but every time you will not send the user's data, username and password through your request, isn't it? So what you will do, you will write the authentication code over here, and every time you will perform the authentication. Let me do something more about this. Let's create something. I will create one Java class, simple Java class, not any servlet, not any other thing. I will create a Java class that is user validation. Finish it. Okay. And here I will use one method that is public boolean, for example, C, public boolean. Okay. User validate. Okay. And one is string username, comma, string password. What I'm going to write is, I will return true if the user is valid. After validation, return true. Else, I will return the false if user is not valid. So for validation, I need two things. One is username and second one is the password. So for that, what will I write? I will write the validation code over here. Okay. I will write the whole code. I will not write only a few things. So I will write the whole code. You can change accordingly. Try catch exception E. And for validation, what do we write? Let's login validate servlet. Let me copy this. And one more thing. Class dot for name. And here is your com.mysql.jdbc.driver. And I have already discussed about that. You can create another class in which you can create the connection and you can get the connection. So I'll not use that part. jdbc colon mysql colon / localhost colon 3306 / new db, and username is root, and the password is the password. Where the login ID is equal to this and password is equal to this, that I'm passing, that is the username and the password to query. If user is a valid user, string username user password, copy, paste this, then return, let me write okay, return true, else return false from here. If any exception occur, then again return false, and again return false. So either try, either catch. So this is not required actually. If you write the finally, then it is required. Now let's see that what is the code about. We will pass some value that will validate your user, and after that you will get the validation of the this user. And you can write one more thing, that is the static. You can create the static method of this class. Now come to the validation. If user is valid, then I want to use the home page. So I can do, here is only the thing, and everywhere if you want to use, that is user validation dot this, and I will write obj dot get the username, obj dot get the password, and you can write if into it, if user validation, okay, fine, dot validate, pass two value. One is your username, so the variable that is called obj dot get the username from this, and obj dot get the password from here. Now look at here. So user validation, that is username and the password, and after that, if this happen, then write the code. If this is not the valid user, you can redirect user to anywhere. So response dot send redirect to index.jsp. You can write your message that your session has been expired, and you can write any message that you want to send from here. And after this, if the user is valid, then it will print something. Suppose if I write out.print and valid, you can perform your logic here. So let's see that home.jsp is working or not. If user is valid or not. So user is not valid, I'll provide some value. Maybe it is valid. It should be valid. Okay, so this is the valid user. Now how do we use this component one more time in our application? You only need to do this. User new JSP, and now you don't need to pass the username and password one more time here, because that value is already saved in your bean class, and that bean class can be used into your application. So just use it. This one. Okay. User validation. This one. New JSP. Run this part. Any error? Fine. Import statement is required because it is outside of your code. Obj dot get username, get password, index.jsp. And here is new jsp.jsp. Okay, so now you can see that it is a valid user. So what you are actually doing, you are using this bean class that has the value that comes from the user you have already set into it, and you can use this class, this object. Which object? This obj, in whole application anywhere, and you can get the value that you have set into it. So it is the reusable component. Why we say that reusable? Because if we have set value for one time, so we can use this value into our application anywhere. Just look at here. Only the validation code that you want to validate the user, this will be. And one more example I can show you, but in which not right now, because that example is related to the Hibernate. So this is not possible to show here because for that Hibernate is required. This is the way that we use bean classes. That's it. Mm, and if you want to print any hello. Yes, JSP only provide the usebean class. Usebean. Actually, this is the action tag we say. So you cannot use JSP colon usebean in anywhere. Okay, so this will be available onto only the JSP. First thing, and in that case, okay, if you replace this, then the purpose of the bean class that is not only for here. When you will go further for implementation point of view, I'm talking for any framework. So it will violate the condition. It will break the rules. So it will not perform actually that it should be. Because when you talk about the framework means the set of rules that is already defined. Okay, so if I talk about the framework like struts, if I talk about the frameworks like hibernate, so in that, if you want to persist any value, then the rule says the class must be type of this. If you do not create this type of the class, means you are breaking the rule, and in that case you will not able to get the value. Okay, let's see one more thing we can do here, that we are getting the value or not. So this is the private, so I'm not going to make it private, just make it as default. Fine. So can we do the same operation with the bean class? Let's see. I think, Meng, you were asking that if we convert this class into the regular class. So first thing what I'm going to change is change the access specifier of your properties. So I'm closing it. Let's execute one more time. Run. Fine. And here I'm going to provide the username as admin and the password, this one. Let's see. User is valid. Fine. New JSP. Will it work? So yes, user is valid. But the rule says the bean class should have the private members. Why we should have the private member? Because whenever you want to perform any setting value and the getting value, that should be by using these methods, because it is internally implemented. How these methods are internally implemented, just look at here. Where is my home.jsp? This one. I'm saying that set the property of asterisk. Okay, so asterisk means it will automatic relate all the properties of coming request. So what are the properties that is coming from the request? So the coming request has the property username and the password. So usebean class will map, listen this one, will map the coming request property with the class property. So that must be same. First thing, that must be same, and when these property will be same, then setter and getter method will be called. So internally implementation is setter and getter. So the rule says if you are defining any bean class, then properties should not be accessed outside of the class directly. So how can we implement that? We can implement by writing private. Yes, tell me. So there will be no exception, as I already shown you. But as I said, because I think this is not the end of your learning, because you will go and learn the frameworks like Spring, like Hibernate or Struts. So I hope you will learn those things. So these are the implementation point of. Internally implementation, you don't need to do anything. So this is the rule, you cannot violate. Okay, so maybe one question could be in your mind, that what if we do not have the same name? For example, the username is a string and the password that I have written over here, that is the same as the name, username, and the password that is coming from the request. So can we change this? So yes, we can change this. The answer is yes. But if you change it, so you will not get the whole benefit of using Bean. For example, if I change this, let me see, where is home, this one. For example, the property name, if I change to, where is my Bean? That is, for example, you. So I need to change the methods also, because setter u and setter method will be changed. Get username in place of, I will write get you, and what if we change the user name to the u? So the property that you are using of the JSP to set the property of all the value that mapped equally, this will not work with the method that is get u or set u. Why? Because the property that is coming from the request are username and the password. Username or password. So if you want to set the value to the u, you will write like this, and you need to pass the parameter, that is, and you need to pass the parameter here by using request dot get parameter, and the parameter name is username. Just write the username, because I'm not defining the variable, that's why. So you need to pass the parameter. Which parameter you want to map with the u? So I want to map the parameter username with the u. So the thing that we were writing previously, that set the value of all Actually, it maps your parameter with every name that you have defined into your bean class. But if you make changes into it, then you will map accordingly here. So in this case, in which you are using the asterisk, you cannot use the parameter because it is the work of this action tag that will map your property with the parameters and set the value. If you want to use the property of this parameter, then you need to specify one by one. So I'm not saying that you cannot make the changes. Yes, definitely we can make the changes. We can. It is, if we do not make the private, fine, it will set. If we do not make the variable same as the parameter, it is also fine. But you need to do some more stuff. You need to write some more code into your application. So maybe you will get not here, but when you go and implement the Hibernate and Spring, definitely when you will go and learn the Spring, you will see that every time you will create the Bean and Pojo classes. And every time you need to mention that the property that is coming from the request and the property that is defined into the Bean class must be same. So I'm not saying that this is only the implementation that will use into the Bean class. Since it is Go and it will extend itself into the framework. So these things will be happening to the backend. So this is the way that we use the use bean in our application. You can use anywhere, as I used onto this page that is new.jsp, as I used on to the page that is home.jsp. Okay, tell me anything more. Is there any session for the Hibernate also? No. Spring? Spring, I guess, is in your course. Then definitely you will go through one more time by using the Pojo classes. So that's all for the JSP. And the thing that we have designed for you for the core Java and the J2EE. Okay. So we have discussed almost all the things, and few things that I want to discuss from the core Java. So tomorrow, not today, because that will be a fresh session. So tomorrow I'll discuss the core Java part. One is the file handling, the few things we have left into the file handling, that is reading, writing, and getting the values from the files by using different classes, different ways. And one more topic you told me that, Meng, that is multi-threading, isn't it? Multi-threading, yes. So multi-threading, I will discuss few important points related to the multi-threading. Definitely, I'll try to cover when you go for writing the code. But one thing I just want to mention into it,